Quantum computing. It's one of those things that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction.
Yeah, but it's real. We're talking about using the crazy rules of quantum mechanics to build computers. Computers that can tackle problems that would take our regular computers, like, forever.
I've been going through all these sources, and to be honest, my head's already spinning a bit. Where do we even start with something this complex?
Well, at the heart of it all is the qubit. It's the basic unit of information, like bits in our normal computers, but, with a quantum twist.
So qubits are like bits, but supercharged. What makes them so special?
Imagine a bit like a light switch. It can be on or off, right? 1 or 0. A qubit is more like a dimmer switch. It can be a mix of both, on and off at the same time. We call that superposition.
So instead of just being a 1 or a 0, it's like a blend of both. That's kind of wild.
It is. And this ability to be in multiple states at once, well, that's what gives quantum computers their crazy potential. They can explore tons of possibilities simultaneously. And that leads to, like, exponential speedups for certain types of problems.
Our sources mention some math behind this superposition stuff. They talk about these alpha and beta coefficients. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Those coefficients basically tell us the weight of each state in the superposition. Like, imagine probabilities. They tell us how likely we are to find the qubit in one state or the other when we measure it.
Ah, okay.
And there's this rule, it's called normalization, and it makes sure these probabilities add up to 1, or 100% if you prefer.
So it's not like the qubit is just flipping between 1 and 0 randomly. It's more like it's in this fuzzy state of both. And those coefficients kind of determine which state it's more likely to be in when we measure it.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is, superposition isn't just theoretical. We've actually seen it in experiments. Scientists have made qubits in labs, and they've observed them in these superposition states.
Wow, so they've actually seen a qubit being both 1 and 0 at the same time.
Yep. It's one of the most remarkable demonstrations of how strange and powerful quantum mechanics really is.
Okay, my mind is definitely bending a little here, but I'm still not quite getting why this superposition thing is such a big deal.
Think of it this way. You're looking for a file on your computer. A classical computer has to go through each file, one by one, till it finds the right one, right?
Right.
But a quantum computer, with its qubits in superposition, it could search all the files at the same time.
So it's like a super-powered search engine.
It's even more than that. This ability to explore many possibilities at once makes them incredibly powerful for tasks like factoring large numbers, which is super important for, like, cryptography.
Okay, now that's starting to sound really interesting. But before we get into cryptography, our sources mention another weird quantum thing. It's called entanglement.
Oh yeah, entanglement is where things get really strange. Imagine 2 qubits, and they're linked in a special way, no matter how far apart they are. If you measure the state of one, you instantly know the state of the other, even if they're like miles apart.
Wait, so if you change one qubit, it could instantly affect another one on the other side of the world. Doesn't that break, like, the laws of physics? Faster than light communication or something?
It's definitely one of the most mind-boggling things in quantum mechanics, but no, it doesn't break any laws. The spooky action, as Einstein called it, is about correlation, not about sending signals faster than light.
Okay, so it's more like these entangled qubits are two sides of the same coin, even if they're far apart. You flip one to heads, the other instantly flips to tails, but you're not actually sending information between them.
That's a great analogy. We still don't fully understand how entanglement works at a fundamental level, but it's been demonstrated in tons of experiments. They've even used it for something called quantum teleportation.
Quantum teleportation. Now that sounds like something straight out of Star Trek.
It might sound like science fiction, but it's real. Scientists have actually teleported quantum states in the lab. It involves transferring the quantum state of one particle to another without physically moving the particle itself.
Whoa, so we've got these super powerful qubits that can be in multiple states at once, and they're linked by this spooky action at a distance called entanglement. And they can even teleport information. This is getting pretty wild.
It is, but remember, this is all based on well-established physics, on quantum mechanics. It might seem like magic, but it's just the universe operating in a way we're only beginning to understand.
All right, my brain needs a minute to catch up. So far, we've talked about the theory of qubits, but how do they actually exist in the real world? What are they made of?
That's a great question. And the answer is there are many different ways to make a qubit, each with its own pros and cons. Some use superconducting circuits, others use trapped ions, and some even use photons, which are particles of light.
Yeah, our sources mentioned companies like IBM, Google, IonQ, and Honeywell working on different types of qubits. It sounds like a real quantum race is going on.
It is, and there's such a variety of approaches, it's fascinating. For example, superconducting qubits, they use materials that conduct electricity perfectly with zero resistance at super low temperatures, though.
Zero resistance. So it's like a superhighway for electrons, no traffic jams, no energy lost.
Exactly. And this allows for really precise control over the qubit's quantum state. Companies like IBM and Google are leading the way in superconducting quantum computing.
And what about trapped ion qubits?
Those are pretty cool, too. Trapped ion qubits use individual atoms that are held in place by electromagnetic fields. Then they use lasers to manipulate the energy levels of those atoms, which represent the qubit state.
So they're like suspending a tiny atom in midair and using lasers to control its quantum state?
You got it. Companies like IonQ and Honeywell are focusing on trapped ion technology. It has some advantages, like very long coherence times.
Coherence times, what are those and why are they important?
Coherence time is basically how long a qubit can hold on to its delicate quantum state before it gets messed up by its environment. The longer the coherence time, the more complex calculations you can do.
So it's like a measure of how long you can keep the quantum magic going.
Exactly. And trapped ions are really good at that, allowing for longer, more complex computations. But even with these amazing advancements, there are still big challenges in quantum computing.
I bet. From what I've been reading, these qubits are super sensitive, really prone to errors.
You're right. One of the biggest challenges is that they're super fragile, easily disrupted by their surroundings, which can cause them to lose their quantum state. It's called decoherence.
So it's like trying to build a sandcastle on a windy beach. The slightest disturbance can mess everything up.
That's a good way to put it. Scientists are constantly fighting this decoherence, trying to keep those fragile qubits in their quantum state long enough to do something useful.
So how do they protect them? Are they building like quantum bunkers or something?
Not quite that dramatic, but it's definitely a tough challenge. One of the most promising solutions is something called quantum error correction.
Quantum error correction. Sounds like a job for some specialized IT support.
Haha, yeah, something like that. Basically, it involved encoding information across multiple qubits in a way that lets you detect and correct errors.
So it's like creating backups of the quantum information to make it more resilient.
Exactly, and it's a vital area of research, because without effective error correction, building large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computers would be almost impossible.
This is all incredibly fascinating, but I think we've thrown enough quantum mechanics at our listeners for one sitting.
You're probably right. Let's give everyone a chance to digest all of this. Before we get into the real-world applications of quantum computing, that's coming up in part 2. Welcome back. I hope you all had a chance to let all that quantum stuff sink in.
I know I did. We covered the basics of qubits and entanglement. But how does this mind-blowing technology actually affect our lives?
The possibilities are, like, endless. We're really just scratching the surface here. One area with huge potential is medicine. Imagine designing drugs with a level of precision we can only dream of right now.
Our sources talked about using quantum computers for drug discovery. Can you explain that a little more? What's the connection there?
So traditional drug discovery, it's a lot of trial and error, right? Testing thousands of compounds to find one that works. But quantum computers could change that.
Instead of just randomly testing chemicals, we could use quantum computers to design drugs for a specific purpose.
Exactly. We could simulate the interactions of molecules at the atomic level. That would help us understand how drugs interact with the body and design new drugs that are way more effective and have fewer side effects.
That's amazing. Any specific examples of how that would work?
Of course. One promising area is developing drugs to fight cancer. Researchers are looking into how quantum computers could help design drugs. Drugs that specifically target cancer cells and leave healthy cells alone.
Wow, that would be a game changer in the fight against cancer. Are there any other ways quantum computing could revolutionize medicine?
Definitely. Think about personalized medicine. Treatments tailored to each person's unique genetic makeup. Quantum computers could analyze huge amounts of genetic data to figure out the best treatment options for each patient.
So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, we could have treatments specifically designed for each person.
That's the idea. It's all about moving towards a more personalized and effective approach to healthcare. But the potential of quantum computing goes way beyond medicine.
I'm all ears. Our sources mention materials science, too. How could quantum computers change that field?
Imagine designing materials with properties we haven't even thought of. Materials stronger than steel, but lighter than aluminum. Or materials that can conduct electricity perfectly, with zero resistance at room temperature.
Now, those would be some revolutionary materials. How could quantum computers do that?
By simulating the quantum interactions of atoms and molecules, we'd have a much deeper understanding of how materials behave at a fundamental level. And then we could design materials with very specific properties for specific uses.
So, no more trial and error in the lab. We could use quantum computers to design the perfect material for the job.
Precisely. Imagine designing super efficient solar panels or batteries that could store energy for days without needing a recharge.
That would be a huge boost for renewable energy and electric vehicles. Any other areas where quantum computing could have a big impact?
One that's both exciting and kind of scary is cryptography. Quantum computers could potentially break the encryption we rely on to keep our online communication safe.
Wait, so all our passwords, our financial transactions, private messages, all that could be vulnerable to quantum hackers?
That's the worry. A lot of our encryption algorithms rely on the difficulty of factoring large numbers, which is really hard for our current computers.
But you said earlier that quantum computers are good at factoring large numbers. Didn't our sources mention something called Shor's algorithm?
You're right, they did. Shor's algorithm is a quantum algorithm. It can factor large numbers way faster than any classical algorithm. If we build large-scale quantum computers, they could potentially crack many of the encryption methods we use today.
Okay, that is a little unsettling. So, is our online security doomed in the quantum age?
Not necessarily. Researchers are already working on new encryption methods, ones that are resistant to quantum attacks. It's called post-quantum cryptography.
So it's like a race against time. We need to develop these new quantum-resistant encryption methods before quantum computers get too powerful.
Exactly. It's a big challenge, but the cybersecurity community is well aware of it, and they're working on it. But cryptography is just one part of it. Quantum computing could disrupt a ton of different industries and fields.
This deep dive has been eye-opening. The potential of quantum computing is amazing, but there are also some real challenges.
True, and it's important to remember, we're still in the early stages of this quantum revolution, but things are moving fast. It's only a matter of time before we see even more incredible applications of this technology.
My brain needs a minute to process all this. But before we move on, what are some other areas we haven't even touched on yet?
Oh, we've barely scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore. Quantum machine learning, quantum simulations of the universe itself, but we'll have to save those for next time.
We're back, and wow, my mind is still buzzing from all that talk about quantum computers changing medicine, materials, and even breaking encryption.
It is a lot to take in, yeah. And remember, we're really just at the beginning of this whole quantum thing.
Right before the break, you mentioned quantum machine learning and quantum simulations. Those sound like, I don't know, something out of a sci-fi movie. Can we unpack those a little bit?
Absolutely. So, quantum machine learning. It's a pretty new field, but basically researchers are trying to figure out how can we use quantum computers to make machine learning algorithms even better, or maybe even replace them altogether.
So it's like giving AI a quantum upgrade. What kind of impact could that have?
Well, the potential is huge. Imagine quantum computers analyzing these massive data sets and finding patterns that our regular computers would never see. That could lead to breakthroughs in all sorts of areas: medical diagnosis, financial modeling, even understanding climate change.
So we could have quantum computers helping us solve some of the world's biggest problems.
That's the hope. And then there's quantum simulations, which is, well, mind-boggling.
You mentioned simulating the universe itself. How is that even remotely possible?
It's definitely early days, but the basic idea is to use quantum computers to simulate how matter and energy behave. At the quantum level, of course. This could give us an entirely new understanding of how the universe works, from the tiniest particles to the largest structures.
So instead of just observing the universe, we could actually recreate it in a quantum computer.
In a way, yeah. Quantum simulations could help us crack some of the biggest mysteries in science, like what is dark matter? What is dark energy? How did the universe begin?
Wow, that's just incredible. It feels like we're on the verge of this whole new era of scientific discovery. But with all this power, are there any risks with quantum computers? Anything we should be worried about?
This is a really important question. Like any powerful technology, quantum computing has the potential for both good and bad. We need to be very careful about the ethical implications and the potential risks as this technology keeps developing.
Our sources didn't really get into any specific ethical concerns. What kind of issues should we be thinking about?
Well, one big one is job displacement. As quantum computers get more powerful, they could start automating jobs that humans currently do. That could lead to some big shifts in the workforce.
So we need to start preparing for those changes now to make sure the transition is as smooth as possible for workers.
Exactly. Another worry is misuse of the technology. Quantum computers could be used to develop more powerful weapons, for example, or to invade people's privacy on a massive scale.
So along with all the exciting advancements, we need to be developing safeguards and regulations to make sure this technology is used responsibly.
You got it, it's a complex challenge, but one we need to face head on. The future of quantum computing is still being written, and it's up to all of us to make sure it benefits everyone.
This has been an amazing deep dive into quantum computing. This technology really could change our world in some huge ways.
It's a really exciting time to be alive, to see this quantum revolution happening right before our eyes. Who knows what incredible discoveries are waiting for us?
It's exciting, but also a little daunting to think about all the possibilities. But I think the main takeaway is that we need to stay informed and engaged and help shape the future of quantum computing.
Couldn't agree more. It's a future that's going to affect all of us, whether we realize it or not.
Well, I think we've given our listeners plenty to think about today. I know my mind is still blown.
I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about this amazing field. The quantum world is full of wonder and possibility. There's always something new to discover.
That's a great point. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of the Deep Dive. Keep exploring the world of quantum computing, folks. It's an incredible journey.